Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Yes, give it up for this film. What a wonderful film. I'm already ready to party. How about y'all? Yes, absolutely. Before we get this thing started, I want to remind you, please vote for the Audience Award. Be sure to do that. You should either get like a text or an email and fill that out with whatever score you choose to give it. And let's get this Q&A started. So if we can bring our filmmakers up, we have director and producer Elegance Bratton. And producer Chester Algernal Gordon here with us. And go ahead.
Hi, again.
I will make sure there's time for audience questions, so if y'all have any, please be thinking about those. But let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing this film with us. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited for this and the after party. I know y'all are too. Y'all will be there, yes. And just to get started, I am curious about the collaborative process between you two and Vince throughout this film. How much did he have a say in kind of like what was the final product?
He had a huge say. He was our music supervisor. He also contributed, excuse me, performances to the score. Like basically, whenever we couldn't afford to license a song, he re-recorded the song for us. So the hustle you hear is Vince's hustle. That should be the working title of this film, Vince's Hustle. And then he also owned a lot of the house songs that his father owned because he had a record label. And, you know, the kind of chain of title of a lot of these songs is a bit, complicated. So Vince ended up helping us in a lot of different ways. And he was an executive producer on the project as well.
But he didn't have Final Cut or anything.
And could you just talk about your relationship with Vince, how that got started, and at what point you decided, like, hey, this needs to be a film?
Well, I have to give a shout out to Roger Ross Williams. He's one of our executive producers. He brought the film to us at New Fest in 2023 while we were promoting the inspection. And he takes us to dinner, and he's like, "Did you know that Hillary Clinton was a househead?" And I was like, "No, I had no idea." And he proceeded to tell me about this movie, which at that time was very much focused around disco demolition. And then as we started to dig in, I got to know Vince Lawrence. And pretty much after the first conversation, I would say, we knew that, Vince was like our Forrest Gump. Like he happened to be in the room of all of these like major milestones of the beginnings of house music. And it just made sense to go with him. And once I found out he was at Disco Demolition, then I kind of, in one person, you have this story of resilience and, 50,000, white folks kind of show up to Comiskey Park holding a black record with the intent to destroy black music forever. And little did they know that Vince Lawrence was an usher working that night, saving up money to buy a synthesizer on which he would write the first house song. So right then and there's something very inspirational to me about the value of holding on to your ideals, no matter what type of pressure is coming down on you. And if you do so, you might change the world.
I absolutely love that part about the film. Just like a wonderful coincidence that it can be turned into something beautiful like this movie. But could you talk about, specifically with the Disco Demolition Night and how, he's walking home and going back and forth. And throughout other parts of the film, you have reenactments. Could you talk about what parts how did you kind of navigate deciding what you wanted to recreate versus what you wanted to just be told by the person directly or through archival footage?
Well, the writing process for this was quite extensive. I started out doing, interviews, spoken interviews with all of the cast and a bunch of people who were not in the film, just to get an idea of like the topography of the land and, what were the conditions under which this music was made. And then I personally, I kind of abhor the idea of expert interviews and documentaries about real people. I feel like the people who are living the life are the experts of their own lives. So I didn't want to crowd it with a bunch of like musicologists and that type of person. So with that spirit, I was like, okay, let's start with the archive and let's do personal archive. Let's do archive of all these people. Some of them had photos, and all the flyers you see are from their personal collections. A little tiny bit of video, and obviously the songs themselves. And then as we started to dig, I realized, oh my God, this is a story I've never really seen before. Like this idea of like, young Black kids in an inner city America coming together to do something that's quite wholesome, entrepreneurial, and really reflective of, the highest ideals of American culture and the American spirit. And that's when I realized it had to be recreated, because there weren't very many videos, there weren't very many photos, and we never get to see this. We never get to see like young Black artistic kids. Like when I think about a comparison, it's like a place like Seattle, right? Where you have like the grunge movement coming out of it. And that has been so well etched in the public imagination. But what we don't see is this moment of American history where these kids get together. So I was just like, let's go to those parties again. Let's try to be in the room and feel what it felt like to be there on the ground up. And I think it turned out all right.
Chester, you want to add anything?
No.
Okay.
Everything he said.
Okay, wonderful. So Elegance, as you're talking, I'm kind of picking up on this theme. So I've seen Pure Kids, which I love, The Inspection, which I love, and this. And it seems like you kind of gravitate toward themes of like youth and these underground scenes. Could you just talk about like your personal connection to that, and why these like kind of coming of age stories are so important to you?
Oh, wow. Well, in terms of house music is a soundtrack of me growing up. I grew up with the name Elegance. I did not name myself. There's nothing wrong with naming yourself for those of us who do that. And just with a name like this, everyone assumes that you're Black and gay, and in my case, they're right. So I had to spend a lot of energy as a kid trying to counteract that belief, trying to act more masculine, trying to kind of prove my manhood, even though I was a child, but that's a different conversation. But trying to prove the fact that I was a real man by denying my name. And then I saw this Geraldo episode. There's some of us who are old enough to know who Geraldo is. And he's like a talk show host, kind of like a pre-Oprah Winfrey type. And this is before Fox News, where he is now. But he had club kids on his show from New York. And they were all of the, Michael Alec and all these other kids who were going to Limelight in New York City. And Geraldo was a horrendous host. He just made...
Rachel was also there, by the way.
Yeah. He picked on these kids and called them a freak. And then, like you were saying, Rachel was there.
Yeah. Rachel showed up and, claimed herself as the queen of house. And it's funny because after we made the film, we ran into this episode just watching random Geraldo episodes on YouTube one night.
Yeah, and wherever those kids were going, I felt like I belonged. And I went to the Limelight not long after that episode aired, and I went into the club and I told people my name, and they were like, Elegance? That's fabulous. That's amazing. Walk for me, dance for me. And it was all of a sudden like my name became this kind of power, and house music was a soundtrack to that power. That was the music that was playing in the background. So in a huge way, going out to clubs at night is how I discovered and became empowered in my own skin. I felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time. And, subculture in general just interests me because, mainstream culture, there's a lot of gender performance and class performance that we all do. But when we go to the underground, there's all these ways that these rules of the daytime get kind of upended and flipped inside out. And in the transition between, the expectations of the daytime and the freedom of the night, I think there's a lot of human truth to be discovered. And what I'm most inspired by is the formation of chosen family and the way that the night gives us permission to rethink those structures that seem so fixed, whether that be my trans girlfriends in the ballroom scene who, you know, maybe in the daytime they're kind of hiding away because they don't feel passable enough. But when they go out at night, they're the girls that everybody wants in the room, you know? So I find the idea of power, those who are typically thought of as being powerless, finding their power together. And I think the subculture is the space that we're allowed to do that. And I, you know, hope that with a movie like this, people realize how fun clubs are. And, you know, we start doing that again. We start going out and dancing and mass again. And hopefully after, when the lights come up, we go and protest. And then maybe the world changes, you know.
Chester brought up Rachel, who I am going to shortly circle back to. But I first just want to ask, how did you kind of navigate the challenges of like preserving truth in a genre that has been, genre and story that has been, you know, whitewashed and erased in a lot of ways?
I know. How did I navigate preserving truth? Well, I believed what people told me, and then I talked to someone else and asked them the same question. And kind of where I'm at when it comes to truth, I believe in the truth of one's experience. I believe that most truth is also very much subjective. It depends on where you're standing and how the world is coming at you, the conclusions that you form. So, you know, this whole culture, this is nighttime. People are drinking, people are partying, making love, hopefully. Memories are hazy, you know, things get messy, things get chaotic. So in that regard, I just leave room for the contradiction and try not to lead the conversation so much as be a vessel for it. So yeah, that's how I deal with the truth. And yeah, I guess, and just believing them, you know, in Rachel's truth, it's a different answer, but you know, but overall, that's my strategy.
So in regards to Rachel's truth and some of the other people's who, you know, seemingly seem to refuse the actual truth, did they have any reservations? Like, how did you approach them? Did they have any reservations about this? Or were they just like, yeah, this is me, I did it, this is my story?
Well, Rachel showed up to her interview with a lawyer. So, you know, everything she said, her lawyer was there to like approve what she said. So I think that when you're living in the moment, you don't always look at things the way they are, or you don't always see them the way that they actually are.
Especially when it benefits you.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the people in the film, black or white, neither of them saw that at the time, like what was actually happening. So when they look back at it today, they're like, oh yeah, it was, I guess, that way. Like she admits, a lot of people admit to that in the film, you know, that they can see how it could be that way, essentially. I think that, you know, Rachel saw the film for the first time at Sundance. She was at the premiere. And, you know, she thought it was a really great film. She thought that she was the villain, she said. And I was like, but Rachel, you said all that stuff. You know, you, like, do the things that you do. And, yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting journey with all of the participants in the film and them seeing the film. And, you know, the audience, each audience reacting differently to different parts of the film and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah. I think with Rachel, it's too bad, you know, she's, to some degree, some of it is not delusion. She is a house music pioneer. She is on the first house record. And I tell Vince this all the time. As a performer, yeah. And Vince, when Vince realized I was even talking to Rachel, he was kind of like, why are you talking to her? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't need to talk to her if you didn't put her on a record. So, you know, so that's, the truth is complicated. It's true that she's a pioneer. It's not true that she's the queen. It's true that she was very much taken advantage of by Larry Sherman as much as everyone else. It's also true that she got a pretty big reward, a much bigger reward than anybody else got out of it. So the truth is complicated. So I guess to go back to your earlier question, how do I handle the truth? I understand that the truth is inherently going to be contradictory, and that ultimately I make films to put it in audience's hands to learn from and to do better. You know, these pioneers in this movie, they are not at Glastonbury. They're not at, you know, the big EDM festivals around the world. Marshall gets his fair share, I will say that. But many of them are not. They're still in Chicago. They're still playing basement parties. And you guys get the chance to change that. You guys who go out to these things can request them and tell your friends about this film and tell your friends about these pioneers. And now the truth, their truth gets to be a part of the overall truth. And I think that's all I can really, you know, expect out of this experience.
That was a word. So I'm going to turn it over to the audience. If you have questions, raise your hand. I will call on you. I'll also try to repeat the question to make sure everybody gets to hear it. But let's start right here in the corner.
I just want to say, I'm from Chicago. I was born at Michael Reese Hospital. My house was at 5000 Cornell. I DJ'd at a strip club on the south side.
Yes.
So I DJ'd Sal.
Yes. You know Sal?
Yeah, I know Sal.
Oh, wow.
I haven't talked to Sal in 20 years. He fired me because I encouraged the strippers to unionize.
Yay. Good for you. Sex work is work.
But I guess it's not so much a comment because I'm just so in awe, having worked on the radio in Chicago, been on B96, been on Kiss FM, and even seeing how we were stolen and how so much of the credit was given to like white, and as a black Latino, like white and Latino DJs, like Tim Spin and Shomer and Julian Jumpin' Perez, and to hear these names, to hear, I mean, we're missing Chippy, you know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But
We talked to him.
oh, really?
He didn't want to be in it. We ain't have enough money.
Yeah, I mean, I think I cannot compliment you enough on this film, and I am just so grateful for this. It's something I didn't know I needed, but I needed.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. We had, yes, right here.
Yes, so what initially drew me to this event was House, because I listened to a little bit of it in the 90s, and when I see House, honestly, the two acts that come to my mind are Basement Jaxx and Daft Punk.
Sure.
So this is all new information for me. What I'm wondering is, how do I begin to reassess what, you know, as far as the relative success and the development of music from acts not just Basement Jaxx and Daft Punk out of the late 90s, but also even older precursors like Kraftwerk out of Germany.
Right. I'm not sure your question. Can you restate the question?
Yeah. When I first started listening to House, What Little I Did back in the 90s, Basement Jaxx and Daft Punk, they were the ones that I were familiar with.
Right.
And, you know, this is all new information for me. It's a part of music history that I never knew about. But now how do I begin to reassess, you know, the relative success of not just those two acts, but even older precursors?
Right. I think
Just to repeat the question for everyone, it seems like the question is how can one like reassess some of the more well-known acts and I guess get to know better the precursors and some of the people featured in this film.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that those bands that you mentioned, all of them list the people in my film as their influences. So I think that there's, you know, when I'm into an artist, I just dig and dig and dig and dig and dig. So I would say dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, you know. And then on a more kind of practical level, there's Facebook groups, there's Chicago House, there's Twitter groups, there's all sorts of social media engagement by the pioneers themselves. DJ Lori Branch has a podcast, I forgot the name of it, but if you look it up, you'll be able to find it, where she has all of the pioneers on this show at some point or other, and they tell you their personal stories of how they came to house music. So then that way you can kind of hear it from the horse's mouth. And I think, like, you know, lastly, just, you know, that's the thing about it. It's like you might be old enough to remember liner notes. Yeah. So, like, for those who don't know, you know, back in the day, you'd buy an album or a CD, which is a disc that you would put in a CD player, and in the jacket, you would see all these liner notes of all the artists that were involved in it. And I think, nowadays music sometimes plays in the background, and you might like something very much, but it's just kind of going and you're going about your life. Take that moment to, look on your Apple Music and look in your Spotify and see who made it and see what else they made. And you'll eventually will find yourself back into Chicago of the 1980s. You'll find who these people are, and then tell someone about it. The next time someone tells you Daft Punk is the kings of house, let them know about the Chicago movement.
I'm going to go up here. So, yes, you in the corner-ish. Yeah, no, you, the one who just turned around. Yeah.
I'm going to run this microphone up to you.
Let's, Keith's giving you the mic.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you all for this beautiful documentary. Very much resonated, very excited about viewing it. I had two questions, but I'll ask one in spirit of the question that was just asked. I know you all mentioned sort of at the end of the film, and I feel like such a millennial bringing Beyonce up, but whatever, I'm going to do it anyway. It's just like, I'm curious just to hear you all's perspective about, the whole... In Renaissance, it almost felt like, it didn't feel like Beyonce's like intention was about trying to like pay homage and bring about all this history to the fore. And also there is a like very right criticism around, or critique around, is that just not more co-opting, more commercialization, in another form, another type of erasure. I'm curious about how you guys think about that, how you receive that, and how, we can see all of current iterations of like house in terms of thinking about like, there's big groups, Black House Radio, even like South African house, but still maybe not necessarily giving homage to the pioneers. So I'm just curious of what you all think on that.
Thank you for your question and thank you for coming. I think, Beyonce lifting all the house pioneers up and people like Honey Dijon and Kevin Aviance and Mike Q and all those people was really nice of her. A lot of them got their first Grammy nominations from that album. She also did it with her country album as well, I believe, where she gave a lot of artists who would normally not being looked at by the Country Academy the platform, I guess, and working with her, to get some recognition and award it. I think that more people should do stuff like that, like what Beyonce did. I think that
Everybody should be like Beyonce.
yeah. I also think that, culture, I think, I travel to a lot of places and culture really is an exchange, I think that it is true a lot of people don't say where they got things from, but, they are inspired by a lot of different things, like there's Latino people inspired by black people inspired by Latino people, white, so on and so on. And I think that house music is one of those things that, it's like South African house music, right? Like it's like that's the source, right? Like the kids in Chicago may not have known that, what they were playing at the time, but it's like the same thing. Like it's the source of like all music. Like house music is just disco, right? Disco is just the blues and jazz and funk sped up, So I think that, or hip hop too, like, further on, house becomes hip hop and there's a bunch of hip hop tracks that are house music versions of it, or even like nowadays, like they said, like the Drake album and stuff like that was a complete house music. But I think it's important that people do that stuff. But again, bring in the people who help create it. I think is important, and give them platforms essentially. Because again, like Madison says, who's getting the coin?
I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So let's go toward the center. Yes, you still have your hand up. I'll come to you next if we have time. Right above you, though. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for this film and to my friend for bringing me here tonight. I think something that stuck with me, of the many things that stuck with me, was the comment from, I can't remember her name, one of the women in the film, saying that she dressed like a boy and slowly took off the layers of clothing to be respected in the space. And that made me think about how even now, we're looking back in the past from that story, but now as a queer non-binary person, I know that there's a lot of dance spaces that are very male-oriented. I know that especially in the hierarchy of queerness, a lot of queer people of color experience that as well. And that is still something that's very alive and well, unfortunately. So I was curious, in making this film, if there's other positive or negative traits from the origins and that time of house music that still lives on today in spaces.
Sure. I think at the end of the day, hurt people. And even though we find refuge away from oppression by finding liberation on a dance floor with each other, if you've been kind of brainwashed and browbeaten into the mentality of the oppressed, then you have an addiction to power as much as anything that oppresses you. And it's difficult to identify that power addiction, and it's even harder to snuff it out when it's reified and affirmed by others who have similar types of abjection. So, of course, we inherently reproduce the systems that we seek to escape because we've been programmed and don't know any better. What's helped me a lot in dismantling or decolonizing my brain has been recently the book All About Love by Bell Hooks. That book has helped me to really not take for granted the status quo of things. Like, people say that's just the way it is and the powers that be, and actually you're the powers that be. And so I hope that we continue. And I think the other problem is that when we're in spaces of partying, the idea is that somehow they're apolitical and that you're meant to turn off your brain and just get drunk and just get high and just forget about all your troubles. But in reality, your troubles make you dance harder. Your troubles make the night that much more fun. So I would say that, we need to foster a cultural and political environment that allows us and expects us to be engaged at all times. So that way we can be aware when we are, reproducing harmful incidences of exclusion.
Thank you.
I know we have plenty more audience questions, but I just personally think this is important, so I'm going to take one more question. Could you talk about any potential upcoming projects and what's coming down the pipeline?
Sure. So right now we are in post-production on our new fiction film. The movie is called By Any Means. It stars Mark Wahlberg, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, Giancarlo Esposito, Nicole Bahari, David Strathairn, Josh Lucas, and LaShans as well. Set in 1966, the Klan had, or rather Vernon Damer, a civil rights activist in Hattiesburg, he's paying people's poll taxes so that black folks can vote the Klan out of power. And the Klan finds out. They burn down his house with him and his family in it. He saves his family. They survive. He succumbs to the injuries and dies. And the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, hires a mafia hitman by the name of Greg Scarpa to bring in the killer, dead or alive. And our film is about the black agent paired with that hitman, trying to determine whether or not the law is the best way to find justice. And the film kind of lives in that gray area between, vigilantism and, I guess, what is the word? What's the opposite of vigilantism? I guess being a soldier or something, and we are in post-production. We expect to be done in the new year. So that's a new one. What else?
And also Arthur Ashe, we're working on too, a biopic.
Yeah.
That's a narrative film as well with Skydance.
Skydance.
Woohoo! Well, I am very excited for both of those, and really anything you do in the future, I will be there. I know you are. Thank you so much for being here once again. Please give it up for these filmmakers.
I just want to say one more thing. Thank you for your applause. It means the world to me. But this film has yet to be distributed. We have been told by so many streamers that nobody wants to watch this movie. It's kind of crazy. They're all stupid. It's okay. That's why they have all the money. But if you could, make some noise for the movie, follow it on Instagram, at Move Your Body, follow us on Instagram, reach out if you know anybody at these streamers, Netflix, if you're friends with Jeff Bezos, if you're gonna fly in a rocket ship with Jeff Bezos, just lean over and tell him about this film.
Also, keep supporting film festivals like this. Donate.
Yes.
And cinemas like this, because there's not many around the country that are independent cinemas anymore. So it's very important that you still buy movie tickets and that you have these experiences with people in theaters.
And donate to Q Festival.
In Denver.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Please be sure to enjoy the party. And are y'all hanging around for a little bit? Okay, so if you have questions, and maybe you can approach them and continue the conversation. And thank you again, and have a wonderful night at our party.